The massive alien warship hung in space like a metal mountain, its hull gleaming with the symbols of the Galactic Council. Inside the sterile conference room, Ambassador Keth of the Vron Empire sat across from Captain Maria Torres, his arms folded in what humans had learned was a gesture of extreme displeasure. The alien's skin shifted from deep purple to angry red as he spoke through his translator device. Captain Torres, your species has caused significant damage to our military forces across 3 star systems, Keth said, his voice carrying the weight of barely controlled fury. We demand an explanation for these impossible victories against our elite units. Maria kept her expression neutral, though inside she felt genuinely confused. The reports from the outer colonies had been strange, filled with accounts of impossible tactical victories that even Earth's best military minds couldn't explain. Entire Vron battalions had been eliminated with surgical precision, their own. Advanced weapons turned against them in ways that defied conventional military doctrine. Ambassador Keth, I've reviewed our military records thoroughly, Maria replied, her voice steady. We have no knowledge of any special operations that match your described encounters. Our military rosters are complete and available for your inspection. The alien secondary arms gestured impatiently, and a holographic display materialized between them. The images showed aftermath scenes from various battlefields, Vron shock troops scattered like broken toys, their advanced armor pierced by their own weapons, defensive positions turned into death traps using the aliens' own technology. This is Outpost Zeta-7 on the mining world of Kepler 442b, Keth said, pointing to the first image. 47 of our best warriors eliminated in less than 6 hours. Their pulse rifles were reprogrammed to target Vron DNA signatures. Their combat suits were hacked to inject paralytic agents. Their communication arrays were turned into improvised explosive devices. Maria studied the images, her military training helping her understand the tactical brilliance of each strike. Whoever had done this understood Vron technology better than most humans, yet had used it in ways that suggested a completely different approach to warfare. Here is Firebase Omega on the agricultural world of New Haven, Keth continued, changing the holographic display. 200 elite guards, their entire defensive grid turned against them. Someone reprogrammed their automated turrets, poisoned their water supply with compounds that specifically target Vron physiology, and used their own terraforming equipment to create environmental hazards that killed them slowly. The images were disturbing, not because of the violence, but because of the cold precision. This wasn't the work of an angry soldier or a desperate survivor. This was methodical, calculated, and executed with an understanding of alien psychology that few humans possessed. And always, this mark, Keth said, highlighting a symbol that appeared burned into metal surfaces throughout each battle site. It was simple, geometric, almost primitive compared to the sophisticated military insignia used by galactic civilizations. 3 intersecting lines forming a triangle, with a single dot at its center. We have searched every human military database, every special operations unit, every black project your species has ever conceived, the alien continued. This symbol appears nowhere in your official records, yet it appears at every site where our forces have been eliminated. Maria leaned forward, studying the mark more closely. Something about it seemed familiar, though she couldn't place where she might have seen it before. The design was too simple to be a modern military insignia, too deliberate to be random. Your intelligence networks have failed to identify this operative, Keth said, his skin darkening further. Your government claims ignorance. Your military commanders insist they have no knowledge of these operations. Yet the evidence is undeniable. Someone is systematically destroying our forces using methods that exceed even our most advanced tactical projections. The alien stood, his impressive height making him loom over the conference table. We are prepared to impose economic sanctions on all human colonies. We are prepared to restrict your species' access to galactic trade routes. We are prepared to take military action if necessary. But we will have the truth. Maria felt a chill run down her spine. The Vron Empire was not known for empty threats. and their military capabilities far exceeded anything humanity could muster in open warfare. Yet she genuinely had no answers to give them. "Ambassador, I understand your frustration," she said carefully, "but I cannot provide information that doesn't exist. Our military records are complete and accurate. If such an operative exists, they are not operating under any official Earth authority." Keth's 4 eyes fixed on her with unsettling intensity. "You expect us to believe that a single human operating without support or authorization has eliminated over 800 of our finest warriors across multiple star systems? That this individual has access to technology and tactical knowledge that surpasses our own intelligence networks?" "I expect you to believe that I'm telling you the truth," Maria replied firmly. "Earth's government has no knowledge of this operative, or these operations. We are as mystified by these events as you are." The alien was quiet for a long moment, his skin shifting through various shades of purple and red. Finally he spoke again, his voice lower and more dangerous than before. "Captain Torres, if your government is truly ignorant of these operations, then you have a problem far greater than military sanctions. You have a human operating independently who possesses capabilities that threaten the stability of the entire galactic community. Such an individual represents a danger not just to the Vron Empire, but to every species in known space." After the meeting ended and Keth had departed, Maria sat alone in the conference room, staring at the lingering holographic display. The mark burned into the alien metal seemed to stare back at her, simple yet somehow ominous. She pulled up her personal files and began searching through historical databases, following a nagging feeling that she had seen this symbol before. It took hours of digging through archived documents, but finally she found it, buried in a collection of historical texts about Earth's pre-space colonization conflicts. The mark was old, much older than humanity's expansion into space. It appeared in scattered references to something called the Ghost Cores, a legend from Earth's darkest periods. The references were fragmentary, incomplete, but they painted a picture of something that had supposedly died with Earth's troubled past. Maria stared at the ancient symbol, then at the images of destroyed Vron forces, and felt a cold realization settle over her. If the Ghost Cores was real, if it had somehow survived humanity's journey to the stars, then the Vron Empire was facing something far more dangerous than they could possibly imagine. She was facing something that even Earth's government didn't know existed. Captain Torres spent the next 3 days buried in Earth's historical archives, piecing together fragments of information about the mysterious symbol. The Ghost Cores had never been an official military unit, never appeared in government records, never received recognition or medals. Instead, it existed in the shadows of Earth's most desperate conflicts, mentioned only in personal journals, survivor testimonies, and whispered stories passed down through generations. The symbol first appeared during the resource wars of the late 21st century, when corporate armies fought over the last remaining oil fields and fresh water sources. Traditional governments had collapsed under the weight of climate change and economic disaster. Military structures crumbled as soldiers abandoned their posts to protect their own families. In this chaos, ordinary people took up arms not for conquest or glory, but for survival. Maria found an old journal entry from a teacher named David Kim, written during the siege of New Seoul in 2087. He described how corporate mercenaries had surrounded the city, cutting off food and water supplies to force surrender. The official military had retreated weeks earlier, leaving civilians to face starvation or slavery. "They came in the night," Kim had written. "We never saw their faces, never learned their names. But in the morning, the mercenary checkpoints were destroyed, their supply convoys burned, their communication towers reduced to scrap metal. They left only a simple mark burned into the metal, 3 lines forming a triangle with a dot in the center. The mercenaries called for reinforcements, but those convoys never arrived either." The Ghost Corps operated by principles that seemed almost primitive compared to modern military doctrine. They had no chain of command, no official structure, no standardized equipment. Instead, they were bound by a simple code: protect the Innocent, fight only when necessary, and never seek recognition or reward. Their greatest honor was anonymity, to be forgotten by history but remembered by those they saved. Maria discovered records of similar marks appearing across Earth during the corporate dictatorships of the 22nd century. When mega-corporations enslaved entire populations to work in their factories and mines, the Ghost Corps emerged from the shadows. They were farmers who learned to make explosives from fertilizer, doctors who developed biological weapons from medical supplies, engineers who turned industrial equipment into instruments of war. The pattern was always the same. Corporate security forces would report impossible losses, their own technology turned against them. Their surveillance networks compromised by people who shouldn't have possessed such skills. The Ghost Corps never tried to hold territory or build armies. They created chaos, disrupted supply lines, and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. During the climate collapse of the 23rd century, when rising seas and extreme weather turned much of Earth into a wasteland, the Ghost Corps adapted again. They became guides for refugee caravans, protectors of the few remaining green zones, and guardians of the seed banks that would eventually allow humanity to terraform new worlds. A meteorologist named Dr. Amanda Walsh had written about encountering them during the Great Storm of 2234, when Category 7 hurricanes devastated the American coast for 3 straight months. Corporate raiders had followed the storms, looting abandoned cities and enslaving survivors. The Ghost Corps had turned the ruins themselves into weapons, using collapsed buildings and flooded streets to create an urban maze that trapped and eliminated the raiders. They moved through the storm like it was their ally, Walsh had written. They knew every flooded street, every weakened building, every place where the wind would carry sound or scent. The raiders had advanced weather suits and military-grade equipment, but the Ghost Corps had something more valuable. They knew the land and they knew how to survive. As Maria read deeper into the archives, she began to understand what made the Ghost Corps so effective. They weren't super soldiers or special operations units. They were ordinary people who had learned to fight because they had to. They studied their enemies not as soldiers but as survivors. They used whatever tools were available, turned any environment into an advantage, and always fought on their own terms. The tradition was passed down through hidden networks, taught in secret by those who had learned from bitter experience. Skills were disguised as hobbies or academic interests. A grandmother teaching her granddaughter to hunt was really training a future sniper. A chemistry professor showing students how to synthesize compounds was really teaching them to make explosives. A computer programmer teaching network security was really training them to hack enemy systems. The Ghost Corps never advertised their existence, never recruited openly, never kept membership lists. Instead, they left behind a legacy of knowledge and a simple philosophy: when the innocent are threatened and official help is not coming, ordinary people must become extraordinary. Maria found evidence that the tradition had continued even after humanity reached the stars. Colonial records mentioned strange incidents where corporate security forces had been eliminated by unknown assailants, always marked by the same geometric symbol. These incidents were usually dismissed as equipment malfunctions or accidents, but the pattern was unmistakable. The last official mention of the Ghost Corps appeared in a military intelligence report from 2387, discussing security threats to early colonial settlements. The report noted that while no active Ghost Corps cells had been identified, the potential for such groups to emerge remained high, particularly in isolated colonies where official military protection was limited. The Ghost Corps represents a unique threat to established order, the report concluded. Unlike traditional insurgent groups, they have no political goals, no territorial ambitions, no desire for recognition. They exist solely to protect civilians from those who would harm them. This makes them impossible to negotiate with, impossible to bribe, and extremely difficult to detect until they choose to act. The report had been classified and forgotten, buried in archives that few people ever accessed. But Maria realized that whoever had written it understood something that the Vron Empire did not. the Ghost Corps, was not a military unit that could be defeated through conventional means. It was an idea, a tradition, a way of thinking that could emerge anywhere, anytime, whenever ordinary people were pushed beyond their limits. As she closed the last historical file, Maria felt a mixture of pride and terror, pride that humanity had produced people willing to fight for others without seeking reward or recognition. Terror that such people still existed, hidden among the civilian population, waiting for the moment when they would be needed again. The Vron Empire was hunting a ghost, not knowing that they were facing something far more dangerous than any military force. They were facing the embodiment of human survival instinct, refined over centuries of conflict and hardship into something that could turn any situation into a weapon. Somewhere in the outer colonies, someone had taken up the old symbol and the old ways. The Ghost Corps lived again. Dr. Lisa Shen knelt in the soil of New Haven's agricultural district, her hands deep in earth that had been transformed by 3 years of careful terraforming. The alien fungi she was studying had adapted to human-modified soil conditions in ways that her textbooks said were impossible. She made careful notes in her research journal, documenting cellular structures that seemed to shift and change as she watched them under her portable microscope. The cum unit on her belt crackled with the daily agricultural report from the district supervisor. Crop yields were up 12% from last month. Water purification systems were functioning at optimal efficiency, and the weather control satellites were maintaining perfect growing conditions. New Haven was everything the early colonists had dreamed of, a peaceful world where humans and carefully selected alien species could coexist in harmony. Lisa looked up from her work as transport ships descended from orbit, their cargo holds filled with supplies from Earth and the inner colonies. The sight should have filled her with the satisfaction of a job well done, but instead she felt a growing unease that had been building for months. The ships were not carrying supplies. They were carrying refugees. Over the past 6 months, the outer colonies had been reporting strange incidents. Mining operations shut down due to equipment failures that killed entire work crews. Agricultural worlds like New Haven receiving emergency evacuations from neighboring systems. Transport ships arriving with survivors who spoke in whispers about attacks that official reports dismissed as accidents or natural disasters. Lisa had read the official statements from the colonial authority. Equipment malfunctions, they said. Atmospheric anomalies, geological instabilities. Random events that happened to coincide with the Vron Empire's expansion into human space. The explanations were reasonable, logical, and completely false. She knew they were false because she had seen the biological analysis reports that never made it into official channels. The equipment failures were caused by bioweapons specifically designed to target human physiology. The atmospheric anomalies were the result of terraforming equipment being reprogrammed to create toxic conditions. The geological instabilities were mining charges detonated in precise patterns to cause maximum casualties. The Vron Empire was systematically eliminating human colonies, but they were doing it in ways that allowed Earth's government to pretend it wasn't happening. Each attack was disguised as an accident, each massacre explained away as a natural disaster. The colonial authority was either too corrupt or too frightened to acknowledge the truth. Lisa's hands trembled as she closed her research journal and stood up. She had been trained as a xenobiologist, specializing in the study of alien plant life and its potential applications for human colonies. Her official record showed no military training, no combat experience, no connection to any security organization. She was a quiet scientist who studied alien fungi and sent regular reports to the Research Council, but her official record didn't tell the whole story. Her grandfather had been Henry Chun, a man who had lived through the resource wars and the corporate dictatorships. He had never spoken directly about his experiences during those dark times, but he had taught Lisa skills that he claimed were just in case. How to move through any environment without being seen or heard. How to read the land and use it as an ally. How to turn any tool into a weapon. How to study an enemy's weaknesses and exploit them without mercy. Lisa, you have to understand something. he had told her during one of their camping trips in the rebuilt forests of North America. There are people in this world who think other. People are just resources to be used up. When you meet those people, you can't fight them the way they expect. You have to be smarter, faster, and more ruthless than they are. He had taught her to think like a survivor, not a soldier. To use whatever was available, to turn any situation into an advantage, to always fight on her own terms. Most importantly, he had taught her to recognize when the time for hiding was over. That time had come. Lisa walked back to her small research station, a prefabricated building that served as both laboratory and living quarters. She activated her personal computer and began accessing files that she had never expected to use. Detailed biological profiles of Vran physiology that she had compiled as part of her academic research. Schematics of their military equipment that she had obtained through her scientific collaboration with captured alien technology. Maps of their supply routes and communication networks that she had pieced together from routine colony reports. The Vran Empire had made their first mistake when they decided to use bioweapons against human colonies. They had revealed their own biological vulnerabilities, given Lisa the data she needed to turn their own weapons against them. Their second mistake was assuming that humans would fight like they did, with massive fleets. Established hierarchies and predictable tactics, they had never considered that. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their armies, but their ability to adapt and survive against impossible odds. Lisa opened the secure storage compartment that she had installed in her laboratory under the guise of protecting sensitive research materials. Inside were items that would have seemed ordinary to a casual observer: chemical compounds for soil analysis, electronic components for equipment maintenance, mechanical tools for equipment repair. But Lisa knew how to combine these ordinary items into something extraordinary. She began her preparations methodically, the way her grandfather had taught her. First, she analyzed the enemy. The Vramshak troops were heavily armored, highly disciplined, and equipped with weapons that could penetrate standard human defenses. But they were also dependent on their technology, conditioned to fight in specific ways, and vulnerable to tactics that fell outside their training. Second, she studied the environment. New Haven's agricultural systems were controlled by a network of automated systems that monitored everything from soil composition to weather patterns. These systems were designed to be tamper-proof, but Lisa had helped design some of them. She knew their weaknesses, their access points, their potential for creative repurposing. Third, she prepared her tools. The compounds she had synthesized for soil analysis could be combined to create toxins that specifically targeted Vran physiology. The electronic components she used for equipment maintenance could be reconfigured to hack into alien communication systems. The mechanical tools she used for equipment repair could be modified to disable or destroy enemy equipment. Finally, she prepared herself. Lisa had never killed anyone, had never even been in a physical fight. But she understood that the Vran Empire saw her people as resources to be consumed, obstacles to be eliminated, problems to be solved. They had declared war on humanity's right to exist, and they were counting on humans to fight. Like civilized people, they were about to learn that humans were capable of being far more dangerous than any civilized species. Lisa sealed her research station and activated the automated systems that would maintain her cover identity. To anyone monitoring her activities, she would appear to be conducting routine fieldwork in the Northern Agricultural District. Her research schedule would show her as occupied for the next several weeks, giving her time to begin her campaign. She picked up her field equipment and walked out into the night, leaving behind the quiet scientist who had studied alien fungi and embracing something that humanity had thought was buried in their past. The ghost cores lived again, and the Vran Empire was about to discover what it meant to face a human who fought not for glory or conquest, but for survival itself. Commander Drac of the Vran Imperial Intelligence Division stared at the tactical display showing the latest disaster. Firebase Omega had been completely eliminated, its entire garrison of 200 elite guards found dead from what appeared to be their own security systems. The automated turrets had been reprogrammed to target Vran DNA signatures. The environmental controls had been modified to produce toxic gas combinations, and the communication arrays had been turned into improvised bombs that detonated when backup forces tried to establish contact. "How many does this make?" Drac asked his intelligence officer, though he already knew the answer. 17 installations across 4 star systems, the officer replied, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. Over 800 casualties, all elite troops. Equipment losses exceed 2 billion credits, and we still have no confirmed visual identification of the target. Drac studied the pattern of attacks, looking for some weakness he could exploit. The mysterious human operative struck every few days, always choosing targets that seemed impossible to assault. Heavily fortified positions that should have been impregnable, defended by troops who had never known defeat, equipped with technology that represented the pinnacle of Ron military engineering, yet somehow, this single human had turned each of these strengths into vulnerabilities. "Sir, we're receiving reports from the Blackwater system," another officer announced. "Mining station Delta 7 has gone silent. Long-range sensors show debris consistent with a reactor overload, but the automated distress beacon is transmitting the same pattern we've seen before." Drac closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his failures. The High Command had given him unlimited resources to stop this human, but every trap he set seemed to anticipate his moves. Every surveillance network he established was somehow compromised. Every hunter-killer team he deployed was found days later, eliminated with the same surgical precision that had characterized every attack. "Deploy the full tracking squadron to Blackwater," he ordered. "I want every sensor active, every scanning frequency monitored. This human has to make a mistake eventually." The squadron consisted of the Vron Empire's best hunters, equipped with technology that could track a single molecule across multiple star systems. They had originally been designed to hunt rogue AI systems and escaped genetic experiments, targets that possessed superhuman capabilities and unlimited resources, but they had never hunted anything like this. The first sign that something was wrong came when the squadron's lead ship reported unusual readings from the mining station's asteroid field. The rocks were moving in patterns that didn't match natural orbital mechanics, as if someone had been repositioning them for weeks. The second sign came when their scanner sweeps detected traces of human DNA in areas where no human should have been able to survive. "Sir, we're picking up movement in Sector 7, the squadron leader reported. Humanoid figure, approximately 100 meters below the surface of asteroid designation. XK7749. Thermal signature is consistent with a single human in environmental protection gear." Drac leaned forward, hardly daring to believe that they had finally cornered their target. "Deploy assault teams to all possible exit points. I want a complete containment grid around that asteroid. This human will not escape again." The assault teams moved with practiced efficiency, their powered armor allowing them to maneuver through the asteroid field with ease. They had trained for this moment, prepared for every possible scenario. They were equipped with weapons that could penetrate any known human armor, sensors that could detect the smallest movement, and communication systems that would allow them to coordinate their attack with perfect precision. They never had a chance. The first team to reach the asteroid found themselves caught in a trap that used the station's own mining equipment against them. Drilling charges that had been carefully placed and timed to create a cascade failure, turning the asteroid into a maze of collapsing tunnels and explosive decompression. The second team discovered that their environmental suits had been sabotaged, their air supplies contaminated with compounds that specifically targeted Vron physiology. The third team made it inside the asteroid, only to find that the human DNA traces had been planted as bait. The real target was already gone, but she had left behind a gift, mining charges wired to the asteroid's core, set to detonate when the next wave of searchers arrived. Drac watched in horror as his entire squadron was eliminated in less than 30 minutes. The human hadn't just escaped. She had turned his own hunting operation into a weapon against his forces. The asteroid explosion provided cover for her real objective, which became clear when reports started coming in from across The Blackwater system. Supply convoys were being attacked with military precision. Communication relays were being destroyed or reprogrammed to broadcast false information. Environmental control systems on orbital stations were being hacked, creating deadly atmospheric conditions that forced evacuations. The entire Vron military infrastructure in the system was collapsing, and it was all being done by someone who seemed to anticipate every move before it was made. How is this possible? Drac demanded, staring at the tactical display that showed red warning symbols spreading across multiple star systems. How can one human move so quickly, strike so precisely, and stay ahead of our entire intelligence network? His intelligence officer had been studying the pattern of attacks, looking for some explanation that made sense within their understanding of military tactics. Sir, I think we've been approaching this wrong. We've been looking for a super soldier, a special operations unit, a government black project. But what if we're dealing with something else entirely? Drac turned to face the officer, desperate for any insight that might help him understand their enemy. Explain. Look at the methods being used, the officer said, calling up detailed analysis reports. Every attack exploits weaknesses in our own systems, uses our own technology against us, and demonstrates an understanding of our psychology that exceeds our own intelligence assessments. This isn't random destruction, it's systematic disruption, designed to create maximum chaos with minimum resources. The officer highlighted patterns in the attacks that Drac had missed. The target doesn't try to hold territory or build an army. She creates confusion, disrupts our supply lines, and disappears before we can respond. She fights like someone who understands that she can't match our military strength, so she doesn't try to. Instead, she turns our strength into weakness. Drac studied the analysis, beginning to understand the magnitude of the problem they faced. You're saying this human isn't fighting like a soldier. She's fighting like a survivor, the officer confirmed. Someone who has learned to adapt to any situation, use any tool, and exploit any weakness. Someone who doesn't think in terms of military hierarchy or official doctrine. Someone who fights on her own terms, using methods that we can't predict, because they fall outside our understanding of how wars are supposed to be fought. The implications were terrifying. The Vron Empire had built their military doctrine around the assumption that all intelligent species would fight in predictable ways. They had standardized tactics, established hierarchies, and conventional approaches to warfare. They had never considered that they might face an enemy who rejected all of these assumptions. Sir, we're receiving reports from the Kepler system, another officer announced. 3 more installations have gone silent. Long-range sensors show signs of the same systematic destruction we've seen before. Drac felt his command authority slipping away as reports continued to pour in. The human was moving faster than his forces could respond, striking at targets that should have been impossible to reach, using methods that defied every tactical manual the Vron Empire had ever written. Worse, the attacks were having an effect beyond simple military casualties. Other species in the galactic community were beginning to take notice of the Vron Empire's inability to stop a single human operative. Questions were being asked about their military competence, their intelligence capabilities, and their fitness to lead the expansion into human space. Deploy everything, Drac ordered, his voice carrying the desperation of a commander who knew he was losing a war he didn't understand. Every hunter-killer team, every surveillance network, every tracking system we have. Find this human and stop her before she destroys everything we've built. But even as he gave the order, Drac knew that he was fighting something that couldn't be defeated through conventional means. The human wasn't just an enemy, she was the embodiment of everything that made her species dangerous. She was proof that humans could adapt to any situation, survive any threat, and fight with a creativity and ruthlessness that exceeded even the most advanced military technology. The hunt continued, but Drac was beginning to suspect that he wasn't the hunter anymore. The mining station orbited a dead planet in the Arcturus system, its automated systems continuing to extract valuable minerals from the lifeless rock below. Lisa had chosen it as her final battlefield because it represented everything the Vron Empire valued: resources to be exploited, technology to be controlled, and isolated locations where they could operate without witnesses. She had been planning this confrontation for weeks, knowing that Commander Drac would eventually become desperate enough to commit his entire fleet to stopping her. The station's industrial equipment had been carefully modified over the course of several visits. Its mining lasers were programmed, its processing facilities turned into improvised weapons factories, and its communication arrays configured to broadcast. Her final message to the galaxy: the Vron fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their ships arranged in a containment grid that covered every possible escape route. Lisa counted 47 vessels, including 3 heavy cruisers and Commander Drac's flagship. They had brought enough firepower to sterilize a planet, all focused on stopping one human scientist with a case of improvised equipment. "Attention! Unknown human operative," Drac's voice crackled through the station's communication system. "You are surrounded and have no means of escape. Surrender now, and we will guarantee your survival for interrogation." Lisa smiled as she made final adjustments to the station's mining equipment. The massive industrial lasers had been reconfigured to function as short-range weapons, their targeting systems linked to motion sensors throughout the station. The ore processing facilities had been turned into chemical weapons factories, producing clouds of toxic gas that would be lethal to Vron physiology. The gravity generators had been modified to create unstable fields that would disorient attackers and crush anyone not prepared for rapid changes in local physics. "This is Dr. Lisa Chun, xenobiologist and researcher," she responded, her voice carrying across all frequencies. "I have no military rank, no official authority, and no connection to any government organization. I am a civilian who has chosen to defend my people against an enemy that sees us as resources to be consumed." The response from the Vron fleet was immediate and overwhelming. Boarding pods launched from multiple ships, their armored hulls designed to penetrate the station's defenses. Assault teams equipped with the most advanced weapons available began their approach, confident that their superior numbers and technology would quickly overwhelm a single human. Lisa activated the station's defenses and began her final battle. The first wave of attackers found themselves entering a maze of modified industrial equipment that had been turned into death traps. Mining charges detonated with precise timing, creating cascading failures that sent debris flying through the station's corridors. Automated systems that had been designed to process or began targeting anything that moved, their mechanical arms swinging with enough force to crush Vron armor. The second wave encountered the chemical weapons that Lisa had synthesized from ore processing compounds. The toxic gases were specifically designed to target Vron physiology, causing paralysis and respiratory failure within minutes of exposure. The aliens' advanced environmental suits provided some protection, but Lisa had anticipated this and included compounds that could eat through their filtration systems. The third wave made it deeper into the station, only to discover that the artificial gravity had been turned into a weapon. The modified gravity generators created fields that shifted rapidly between crushing force and zero gravity, disorienting the attackers and making it impossible for them to maintain formation. Lisa moved through these fields with ease, having spent weeks adapting to the changing conditions. Commander Drac watched from his flagship as his assault teams were systematically eliminated by traps that used the station's own equipment against them. The human wasn't fighting like a soldier. She was fighting like an engineer who understood every system, every weakness, and every way to turn industrial equipment into instruments of war. "Sir, we're losing contact with all assault teams," his tactical officer reported. "The human appears to be using the station's mining equipment as weapons. She's turned the entire facility into a fortress designed specifically to counter our tactics." Drac felt his frustration building into rage. "Then we destroy the station. Charge the main guns and prepare for orbital bombardment. If we can't capture this human, we'll eliminate her." But as the fleet's weapons charged, Lisa activated the final phase of her plan. The station's communication arrays began broadcasting. across all frequencies, sending her message to every ship in the system and every monitoring station within light years. "My name is Lisa Chun, and I am not a soldier," her voice carried across space. "I am a scientist, a researcher, and a civilian who has watched the Vron Empire systematically murder innocent people while disguising their crimes as accidents. I have studied your biology, your technology, and your psychology. I have learned to turn your own strengths against you, not because I am superhuman, but because I am human." The broadcast continued as the Vron fleet hesitated, realizing that their every move was being recorded and transmitted to the galaxy. "The mark I leave behind is not a military insignia. It is a symbol of the Ghost Corps, a tradition that represents ordinary people who become extraordinary when they are pushed beyond their limits. We are not soldiers or special operations units. We are farmers, teachers, engineers, and doctors who have learned to fight because we have to." Captain Torres received the transmission aboard her diplomatic vessel, which had been approaching the Arcturus system in response to reports of the final confrontation. She watched in amazement as the lone human on the mining station continued her broadcast while fighting off an entire alien fleet. "The Ghost Corps has no rosters, no official recognition, and no desire for glory," Lisa continued, her voice calm. "Despite the chaos around her, we exist only to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We are invisible until we choose to act, and we are everywhere you least expect us to be." The mining station's defenses continued to hold as Lisa spoke, her improvised weapon system proving more effective than the Vron Empire's advanced military technology. But she wasn't trying to win a conventional battle. She was making a statement that would be heard across the galaxy. "Commander Drac, you have spent months hunting for a super soldier. A special operations unit, a government black project," Lisa said, addressing the Vron commander directly. "Instead, you found a xenobiologist who learned to fight from her grandfather, a man who survived Earth's darkest years by adapting to any situation and using any tool available." The Vron fleet held its position, unsure how to respond to an enemy who was simultaneously defeating their forces and explaining exactly how she was doing it. The broadcast was being monitored by dozens of species throughout the galaxy, and the Vron Empire's reputation was crumbling with every word. "The truth that terrifies you is not that humans have secret weapons or advanced technology," Lisa continued. "The truth is that we are ordinary people who become extraordinary when we have to. We adapt, we survive, and we fight with a creativity and ruthlessness that your military doctrine cannot predict or counter." Captain Torres made her decision and ordered her ship to move closer to the station. She activated her own communication systems and added her voice to the broadcast. "This is Captain Maria Torres of the Earth Diplomatic Corps," she announced. "I am here to negotiate a ceasefire and arrange for the withdrawal of all Vron forces from human space. Dr. Chun has demonstrated that humanity will not submit to conquest or slavery, and that we possess capabilities that exceed your current understanding." The standoff continued for several hours, with neither side willing to escalate further. Finally, Commander Drac received new orders from the High Command. The Vron Empire was facing political pressure from other galactic species, who were questioning their military competence and their fitness to lead expansion efforts. Lisa's final message was simple and direct. "The Ghost Corps is not a military unit that can be defeated through conventional warfare. It is an idea, a tradition, and a promise. As long as humans exist, there will be those among us who fight for the innocent, protect the helpless, and resist those who would enslave us. You cannot negotiate with us, bribe us, or intimidate us. We are not soldiers, we are survivors." The mining station's defenses finally failed as its power systems reached critical levels. But Lisa had already accomplished her objective. The Vron fleet withdrew from the system, their commander facing court-martial for his failures. The broadcast had been recorded and transmitted throughout the galaxy, revealing the existence of the Ghost Corps and demonstrating humanity's capacity for asymmetric warfare. Lisa disappeared into the refugee populations of the outer colonies, her official records still showing her as a xenobiologist conducting routine research. The Ghost Corps returned to the shadows, invisible until needed again. But the galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest weapons were not their ships or their soldiers, but ordinary people who could become extraordinary when their survival was at stake. The mark remained burned into metal and memory, a promise that somewhere in the darkness, humans were watching and waiting for the moment when they would be needed again.